up, I felt the man grab my shoulder and pull me back very hard.
Welcome to part 2 of Scary Animated Stories. Let's watch. Alright. Layla. I also like to watch Possum TV. I love to.
Started to panic as both of us are now hid in the darkness of the bus stop. "What are you doing?" I said in a scared voice. It was still dark out and the bus driver obviously didn't see me with the headlights on and the rain pouring. It was at that moment I realized I was in a dark street with a creepy man putting his hands on me, probably making a horrifying face. Slowly I looked behind my shoulder and the last thing I remembered was him hitting me in the head and knocking me out unconscious. I saw the man sleeping in a bed to my right. The adrenaline was rushing through me and all I could think about was how I could escape. I've had some training in MMA, so I didn't feel too unconfident if I needed to fight for my life. Since the guy was still asleep, I was planning on elbowing him repeatedly in the head while he was still sleeping and then find a way out.
Just a
I knew
second.
this would work if I could do it correctly.
Okay, you guys, I'm back. I could have just paused it. Ooh, I wouldn't visit that whole time. But
So I propped up and walked to his bed. I got my arm ready and instantly he turns his head and sees me above him. I tried to hit him as hard as I could. However, with the fear at that moment, I missed. Again, I started swinging as hard and as fast as possible. But to my surprise, the man didn't block any of my fists at all. He just laid there smiling as his head got pounded. Honestly, it freaked me out even more that he wasn't doing anything. But finally, his face gave in. His nose started to bleed and a cut began to emerge on his face. I started to slow down as I ran out of stamina. His eyes closed and the smile began to fade. Instead of taking a step back, I decided to keep going and kept swinging as hard as I could. I was sure the man was out cold. The man's eyes opened and he smiled and stood up. I saw a window to my left and without hesitation I quickly ran and jumped out of it. I landed on top of a bin. His apartment was only 2 stories high, so it didn't hurt too much. It turns out it wasn't long after he kidnapped me as it was still dark. I ran away and luckily I got back to my home safely. When I got home, I realized there was still blood over my hand. I felt my head and there was blood from when he hit me as well. As I rang my doorbell, I heard my dad's footsteps, followed by heavy footsteps to my left. The man followed me and was suddenly there coming towards me. My dad opened the door and I ran straight inside the house and locked it immediately. I explained everything to him. My dad, being the guy he is, swings the door open, fists clenched with me following. As we went outside and looked around, the man reappeared. I went towards him with brass knuckles on, but my father stopped me and muttered, "Hand." I looked at the man's hand to see a knife and he starts to slice the air. He gets closer and continues to swing the knife maniacally, but manages to barely slice my cheek. My dad grabs him by the arm and beats him senseless. We then caught the police and the man was locked up. Ever since that day, I've become an even more cautious of a person. It took me a while to get over the fear of that day, and that's why I no longer ride on the bus. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spent the time thinking. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance,
the smiling man.
Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an overcoat. Closer.